Thank you everybody for signing in this morning. We're doing our Python bootcamp today. Hopefully you will find it very useful, either as your first introduction to Python or as a refresher in maybe a programming language that you haven't used in a little while. So just to do some initial logistical discussion, we do need to remind you that these sessions today are being recorded and live streamed on YouTube. Just so that everybody is aware that you are being recorded and live streamed to YouTube. The live streams will be available usually roughly an hour after we finish recording for each session. It takes about an hour for YouTube to process the video file after the live stream is finished. So if you do need to watch anything asynchronously, they will be available pretty much immediately after each session is completed. We will be editing those over the course of the week after the workshop, but the unedited raw files will be available more or less right away, and we'll send out links to those at the end of each day. So screen sharing and microphones have been disabled for everybody in the main session, just to avoid any accidental unmuting, things like that. If you have a question, please raise your hand or submit it to the chat, and we can help you get unmuted so that you can ask that question. We will be monitoring the Zoom chat today. So I'll be moderator for this session. We have a TA, Sharon Minsick, who will also be helping out with answering questions in the chat. And if things are particularly relevant to what's being discussed in the lecture, if we have multiple requests for the same question, we can break in and ask the instructor to address it directly. Please take some time now. You have a few minutes here before we get started to make sure that you have a working NanoHub account and to download and install CompuCell3D to your desktop if you are planning to run it locally. Maybe for now, just download CompuCell. It does take a little bit of time to install. If you haven't installed it yet, we'll have some 15-minute breaks between sessions, and then we'll actually have a little bit of time before lunch to talk about any issues you may be having with installation. If you have not joined the Slack channel, please do so now. I will post that link in the chat here before we move on. One thing I forgot to put here is that these slides can be found, and all the slides for today can be found in the student materials folder, which is here. So just a quick overview of what this week is going to look like. So today, again, we're talking about the Python Bootcamp. We'll have 2 morning sessions on kind of fundamentals of Python, just programming the basics in the Python language. We'll have a midday Q&A session before lunch, where we can talk about either any lingering questions you had about the first 2 modules. And again, if you're having any issues with NanoHub and CompuCell, this might be the time to bring it up. We'll try to get your issues solved if we can, but if not, then we'll make sure to contact the people who can help you get ready for tomorrow. Then we'll have 2 sessions after lunch on some slightly more advanced topics in Python. I'm not going to go over the schedule for the rest of the week just yet. Again, these slides will be available in the student materials folder. But tomorrow we will have our basically basics of CompuCell3D day. So day 1 will be talking about CompuCell and its functionalities, some examples of what you can do in CompuCell. And then we'll have a module on kind of the underlying algorithm that runs CompuCell, followed by discussion of cell properties. And then we'll have a self-guided model building exercise at the end of the day. And some of these extra sessions may be liable to change over the course of the week, kind of depending on what people give us feedback about, some extra things that people may want to be discussing. But this will be the overall schedule for the rest of the week for the rest of the content. So for today, just to give an actual breakdown of the times, again, this went out by email last night, but for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, we will get started here at 10 o'clock. with our first module in Python Basics. That will go till 11:30. Again, all of these times are in Eastern Daylight Time, which I believe is GMT +4, I think. Anyway, if you're all here, then obviously you had the correct time zone changes, so won't worry too much about that. We'll have a break from 11:30 to 11:45 before Module 2, where we'll talk about lists, tuples, strings, and slicing, different types of Python sequences. From 1:15 to 2 o'clock, we'll have our extra session for Q&A. Then we'll have a short lunch break from 2 o'clock to 2:45. Again, if you need to go get your lunch during the extra session, that's fine. This is mainly for people who do have additional questions today. Module 3 will be from 2:45 p.m. to 4:15, talking about dictionaries, functions, scope of variables within functions, and plugin modules. Have another 15-minute break, followed by our final module on classes, attributes, operations, and then we'll have 30 minutes at the end of the day for kind of final wrap-up questions and comments. So if anybody needs to stick around for additional questions, we'll have roughly 30 minutes to do that at the end of the day. And please feel free, if you can't stick around for the Q&A session at the end of the day. We know that gets pretty late for some people, especially with time zone differences. Please feel free to send emails to me over the course of the day today with any questions you have, and we can try to get back to you as quickly as possible. I will put my email here in the chat for anybody who doesn't have it yet. Yeah, Sharon is telling me in the chat here it's GMT -4. Sorry, I had that mixed up. But again, those of you who are here clearly already knew about the time difference. There's my email in the chat. Just a couple of things here with our last few minutes before Bobby gets started for us today. Some Zoom logistics. Again, screen sharing and microphones will be disabled by default, but if you have a question, again, raise your hand, let me know, and we can get you unmuted if it's something that we need to ask the instructor directly. But go ahead and in the meantime, put your questions in the Zoom chat, because me and Sharon and James will be available today to help with answering questions in the chat. Sharon and I will be the primary contacts today, but just send everything. If you have questions, it's best to just send them to the main channel so everybody can see them, because if you have a question about something that's being discussed, it's likely that at least a few other people do as well. So it's good for everybody to see basically all of the questions that are being posed. If you're having technical issues with the Zoom, if any features are disabled for some reason, for example, if you can't see polls, if you're having trouble with the chat, please let us know right away. It may be an issue with Zoom. A lot of times, if your client is sufficiently out of date from the host's client, Zoom will disable certain features like polls and things that have been updated in between the two versions. So if you are having issues, usually logging out during one of the breaks, updating your client on your end, and logging back in will fix those. But if it doesn't, then that's something that we'll need to look into. So please let us know right away if you're having issues with the Zoom. During exercises, we will do polls for if you need a little bit more time or if you're completed with the exercise already. Please do respond to those polls. It's useful for us to get a feeling on where everybody is during the exercises. And then we will also have a slightly longer module feedback poll at the end of each module that we do ask you to fill out. Again, so that we can see kind of what people thought of the module at the end of the day. James makes a good point here in the chat. It usually works better if you install the Zoom app rather than running Zoom through a browser window. Browser Zoom will work in a pinch if you're having issues with your Zoom client, but the browser does not offer a lot of the features that we like to use in these sessions. So if you have not installed Zoom locally, we do recommend that you do that as soon as possible. Yes, and again, like I said before, these videos and PowerPoints will all be made available after the session if you need to review or if you miss any of the materials. running a little bit short on time, so I'm just going to go over this very quickly. Again, just a quick reminder of the hackathon at the end of the 2 weeks. It's going to be Saturday, August 12th and Sunday, August 13th this year. We had a couple of meetings about this last month, or well, earlier this month. Yeah, actually, I should back up. James makes a good point. Are there any questions about course organization or logistics before we talk about the hackathon? Give people a minute to raise any concerns or ask any questions if you're unclear on anything so far. Okay. So no, again, keep in mind, microphones are muted by default. If you do have a question, feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, go ahead and put it in the chat and we will respond to it as we go. But so getting back to hackathon details, we will have a couple of sessions this week and next week during the extra sessions for people who were not able to make it to the presentations or the presentation sessions earlier this month to give lightning talks if they would like to, and we will help people with teaming. Teams will be mostly self-organized. So if you do have a project idea or you do want to participate in the hackathon and would like to join a project, we have a channel in the Slack for that, as well as an interactive document that everyone can use. I'll post the link to that during the Q&A session later. But again, it sort of will be up to, we can help if people need help finding a group or need help finding teammates. But for the most part, grouping will be self-organized by each kind of project lead. What the hackathon will look like, it's going to be mostly open work time for the groups with the instructors circulating around to help with what the different groups may need. We'll have a couple of check-ins in the morning and the noon, in the morning and at noon. And then at the end of the second day, we'll have a more formalized presentation for you to present the progress on your model at the end of the day. And then we do offer post-hackathon support. Whether you attend the hackathon or not, we do offer support for anybody who is using CompuCell, who is maybe interested in generating publications or is maybe working with something on their PhD or master's thesis. Or even if you're just a hobbyist and you're interested in building a model with CompuCell, we're always happy to help with that as well. So we do offer post-hackathon support if you would like to continue working on your hackathon project after the actual hackathon window is over. Some links, some NanoHub links. So this is actually not super relevant for today. We will save these for tomorrow. But for those of you who are planning on using CompuCell on NanoHub, we do still recommend that you try to install it locally as a backup. We will have a lot more details tomorrow on how to use CompuCell in the NanoHub environment. Again, here's the links for downloading CompuCell. I will share all of these once Bobby gets started here. I don't want to cut into his time too much. Where to find resources, again, some links here in the slides. I won't blast these all into the chat, but again, these slides are available in the student materials folder. I will reshare that, because I think we've had a couple of people join since my last share. This slide deck is module 0.0 if you do need any of these links. I believe that's all I have for today. Again, links to emails of all the people that are involved in the workshop this year, in case you need to get in touch with anybody directly. If you have a question and you're not sure who to contact, please just send them to me and I can forward them to the appropriate person.